Now that it's been a while since the DLC was released, and now that I'm not quite in the same Caden overload mode that I was in just a few days ago, I've had some time to sit and collect my final thoughts on the Citadel DLC and its impact on the game as a whole. My feelings on the DLC are very complicated. For as much as I fawn over the positive aspects of it, it's just as recognizable to me that there are problems as well. And this is something that frustrates me with fandom. It seems like people are forcing a polarized view from fans. They're either fans lining up to kiss BioWare's feet and thank them ad nauseum, or they're the ones who are swearing off BioWare games forever and saying there's little to no redeeming value here. And since I don't fall firmly into either category, I sometimes get shit for that. But I think having a good critical eye means you need to be able to see both sides of the coin here. My biggest problem with the Citadel DLC is how it fits in with the overall story in Mass Effect 3, and I believe this is probably the most popular problem that people have with it. It's quite hard to justify Shepard and her squad partying and dancing and hanging out in nonsensical situations when, every hour, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are dying. How many are being turned into husks while I shoot a Blasto movie with Javik? How many Turians are dying while I trip the Light Fantastic with Garrus? Considering the race against time aspect of the core game, taking a shore leave vacation at a time like this seems at the very least to be in poor taste, and it's something I couldn't shake as I played it. The lighter, almost parody-worthy quality of some of the DLC moments also feel out of character with the much more somber tones of the rest of the game. There were several instances where I was surprised that they were cracking jokes in serious situations. It's as if the DLC was written by Joss Whedon. Firefly meets Mass Effect is what the vibe is to me. But overall, more than the tone, the timing of the DLC is the problem. There's no question that this DLC plays out more like a post-ending DLC than a pre-ending one. If it weren't for the occasional mention of Reapers, you could probably even headcanon it that way. And that's the real shame of this situation, because this DLC, as post-ending content, would be a massive celebration of the series that would be universally enjoyed. But to do so would mean they would have to acknowledge the problems with the endings and address them in order for this DLC to work as post-ending DLC. And we all know BioWare isn't going to touch the ending with a 10-foot pole. Artistic integrity and all that. So, unfortunately, to be fully satisfied with this DLC, you'd have to be either willing to consider it as some kind of alternate reality, or headcanon that this happens directly after a full EMS destroy ending and forgive some of the details. Let's be honest. Most people will play this as endgame content anyway, since they've already finished the game. Very few are going to keep going after this DLC ends and finish the full game again. So, for all intents and purposes, for most people, this is the ending to Mass Effect 3. But even with these problems, the positive side of this DLC can't be ignored. It is a surreal treat to be able to spend time with all of your squad mates in situations you normally wouldn't be experiencing with them, seeing more of their personality that they usually have to hide or subdue under more professional conditions. To their credit, the Citadel DLC is truly a labor of love from BioWare, a message from them saying, "We hear how much you love these characters and we want to thank you for it." The fact that some writers even sought out or bookmarked fan artists and fan writers' works as inspiration supports this, and I think it's easily the best time we're allowed to gorge ourselves on replayability options with a healthy variety of unique dialogues between these diverse squad mates. One could argue, why wasn't more of this in the games? And it's a valid concern, but realistically at this point it's the end of Shepard's series and we can't go back to should'ves and could'ves as much as we would like to. That's all there is. There isn't any more. If anything, it makes you long for this attention to detail in the main games. For example, why did it take this long, 6 years, for us to finally see a cutscene of Caden, arguably one of the most powerful human biotics on our squad, performing biotics? But again, it's over. And for good or bad, our chances at seeing more is over as well. They tried to pack in as much character love as they could at the very end, and to say it isn't appreciated would be a bold-faced lie. It's touching to see how far the characters have come. And as a Caden fan, it's immensely rewarding to see how he's developed. The Citadel DLC has him truly come into his own as a supportive, warm, and strong individual. It's funny thinking back to Eden Prime and watching him grow as a person, finding out who he is and what he's about over the course of all of those years and missions, fumbling sometimes along the way, but learning and changing because of it. He's not perfect, but he recognizes when he has faults, and he learns. When the clone challenges him, he doesn't bat an eyelash at his support of Shepard, and that speaks volumes for him as a character. That might be one of the secrets behind why people love Mass Effect. The characters change and thrive like real people would, and players want to see that evolution. It's the strongest force behind what makes this DLC great, the characters. And it's this odd moth-to-a-flame temptation that most Mass Effect fans can't ignore, the chance to have that final word with the ones they care about. It's just ironic that it isn't technically the final word when placed in the context of the entire game. Has my opinion of BioWare changed since the ending debacle of last year? Somewhat, yes. It's very crafty in a way, releasing such a heartfelt DLC for the very end of a game cycle. It will blur the memories for most people of what happened last year. But for me, a lot of that is difficult to forget. The arrogance, the artistic integrity, and an extended cut that still did not remedy the real problem, even if it slightly smoothed out the bumps. Will I never buy another BioWare game again? No, I'm not that gung-ho anymore about shunning them entirely. But this does mean that they don't get an automatic pass like they used to. Now their games will be judged just the same as how I judge other companies' games. Through friends, reviews, videos, critical analysis, the works. My hope is that they've learned some valuable lessons from this entire experience, and that their next games will reflect that new maturity. But after all is said and done, I can't help feeling incredibly solemn and wistful about it. Maybe it's Sam Hulick's powerful theme that plays in the final scene of the DLC, or the bittersweet last words Kaidan says to Shepard that he'll be waiting. I'd like to think that this isn't the end for them, that he is out there finding her and finally enjoying some well-deserved peace together. But it's hard to let go, isn't it? There's such a strong sense of finality. That long look Shepard gives at the Normandy, this is really it, the end. And in that respect, it's a testament to how well these characters were made, that we feel that lump in our throat when we have to remind ourselves that this really is the end of their stories. That's why I think the last scene in the DLC isn't really about finishing the story, but maybe rather BioWare saying goodbye. They're giving these characters a send-off, and perhaps trying to reassure you that what you hope will come to pass, the real closure that they aren't showing after their ending, is there and waiting for us to fill that part in our hearts. However you may feel about the journey to get to this point, there's one thing you do have to admit. It really has been a hell of a ride.